Welcome to the Bowling University studio from the International Bowling Campus here in Arlington, Texas. I'm Bart Berger, and I'll be your host for this edition of the Bowling University Profit Break. Thank you all for joining us. Our mission here at the university is to enrich people's lives personally and professionally, and the Profit Break is an opportunity for sharing insights on how to grow revenue, reduce costs, enrich yourself, your team, and your business. Now, if you're joining the Profit Break for the first time, welcome. We're glad you're here. Give us 15 minutes and you're going to be well on your way to improving your profitability. Now today we have with us in studio from just down the road, Mr. Scott Emley. Scott is the CEO of the High Five brand that currently owns and operates 2 entertainment centers in the Austin, Texas market. Now Scott is relatively new to our industry, but is quickly becoming a respected operator in the entertainment space. At his Lakeway location, Scott recently added axe throwing to the entertainment mix. We're going to spend some time with Scott learning more about why he made the decision to add axe throwing and how it's performing to date so far. So Scott, welcome. Thanks for coming down to the studio today.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Bart.
Yeah, great. So hey, before we jump in and learn about axe throwing and kind of what we want to talk about today, let's learn a little bit about you, how you got into the business and kind of how did you get to this point today?
Well, it's actually a perfect market research answer. I was the customer. So basically, my background is an electrical engineer, and I ran marketing at a company in Colorado Springs specifically, and had a tough situation when I got on board. I was asked to deliver the news that we were reducing payroll to all these employees, and as the VP of marketing, I was the mouthpiece internally as well as externally. I said, well, if I'm going to deliver this news, this team has been working really, really hard for the company I was working for up there, and can I take them out? Can we do something to celebrate the successes? And so we went to a place at the time, it was called the Brunswick XL, later became the Summit, which we all know is a Don McBrain Center, which has become a friend in the industry, and basically spent, I think it was like $15,000, and yeah, we save some money on payroll, but man, that was one of the greatest experiences ever. And the team we stay connected now with social media, and we still to this day, we talk about that time together. So that really planted the seed. I didn't say, hey, I want to get into family entertainment, but I realized what a difference it made for the team. So then moving down to Texas, if you've been in the technology world, you're pretty much, you either by choice or by attrition or by selection, you end up in a lot of different companies. I ended up back in Austin, Texas, and just like right now it's I don't know how many days straight of 100 degrees. 2012, 2013 in Texas, we had a significant drought, and that's really what planted the seed, is there's nothing to do here. And I played football at the University of Texas, as you know, and 2 of the other guys that I played with lived in the area. We got together and said, there's nothing to do out here. There's your market need. So it turns out the community loves family entertainment, and we could deliver that need to them by building High Five. It's really that simple.
Yeah, it's fascinating how sometimes you take that tragedy and you turn that into a blessing by being able to, you never thought at that moment in time it would lead to this.
I didn't, and that's why I trust in a higher power, and it's not me sometimes making those decisions.
Well, the decision's made. You got into the business. I remember when you and your lovely bride came to management school a couple of years ago, wide-eyed and just wanting to learn and soak it all in. You got this beautiful location in Lakewood, and then you added a second location, Anderson Lane.
Yep.
So for the folks that maybe aren't familiar with your location, just tell us quickly a little about each location and what they offer.
Sure. So the Lakeway location is a 2-story family entertainment center. It's anchored by bowling, so that was one of the things that we always wanted to make sure was the focus. I call it the milk aisle of our facility. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, when you go to the grocery store, they design it with the milk aisle in the back. That's because that's usually the first thing people need, and so therefore they have to pass everything to get there. So we designed our Lakeway location with 2 floors of entertainment with bowling on both floors in the back. It also has an arcade, laser tag. We added the Topgolf Swing Suites, which has been moderately successful events. And then, as you know, most recently, we took the risk of adding axe throwing. The Anderson Lane location, a little bit off of our brand, but it was a tremendous takeover opportunity in the North Austin area. And it's a much smaller footprint, but we were able to add some automation to the bowling. I think it was even hand scoring, which I know this is going to probably be repeated somewhere, but I still don't know how to score perfectly in bowling.
You're not alone.
It's something I'll figure out, I think, in the next 10 years. But we added the automatic scoring to the lanes that were there, and then we also added the Topgolf swing suite, and we also added the axe throwing. So now we have 2 locations with axe throwing. But the interesting thing about that location, it has a life of its own. Turns out, in 1976, it was a Mexican restaurant called Casino del Sur, and Jimmy Lung was the proprietor of this Mexican restaurant. First frozen margarita machine in all of Austin.
Okay.
And guess who tasted that margarita? None other than Jimmy Buffett. And so it has a life of its own as the inspiration for his hit song Margaritaville. So it's a Parrot Head landmark.
Awesome.
So this is within the walls of High Five. So we have not only a great entertainment venue that has a life of its own, but it's also an Austin landmark, true to Austin being, music driven. So.
Yeah. So you've got 2 great locations, both successful in their own way. One that was kind of a rehab project, and your Lake Way, which was the ground up. So the question becomes, you've got this successful location that still is not dated and old, and you made the decision to use some of that footprint to do something else. Why take that risk?
I think early on in the process, and I admire all of the people that have been associated with bowling in the past. As you said, we're relatively new. It doesn't feel that way sometimes. I think after year 2, I felt like a 20-year veteran, and y'all know what I'm talking about if you're in this industry. But I learned pretty quickly that we had to stay fresh. So even if a consultant provided us information that probably would have worked if we had done it the way they did it when they did it, we had to make some adjustments along the way. That includes keeping the game room fresh so that it looks and keeps the freshness about it. Announcing something, maybe once or twice a year, like we did with the Topgolf swing suites. But most importantly, and I think this is what probably caught your eye when we talked about it, we completely looked at the restaurant area. If you think about what's happened in bowling, we didn't have the history of where it went from a bowling center to a family entertainment center. We came in right as a family entertainment center. Food and beverage was this big push about the time, if you recall. Everything was food and beverage. We were suggested to build a humongous restaurant eating area. What we found over time is we started looking at return on investment for all the square footage within High Five, that this restaurant was actually a very expensive waiting room. So on a Saturday, don't get me wrong, you would go into High Five and it's a great place to park and eat. But it turns out I wouldn't say there's not many people. There are some that actually do this because the food's good. Thank you, chef. But there are very few people that would just go into High Five to eat and then leave, unless they've got something to be there for, whether it's a game or it's a bowling or a league or what have you. So we looked at this restaurant and we're like, man, this is a lot of square footage. What can we do with it? So I have to this is where, as this is being presented to my wife, who's probably going to watch this, she gets full credit. Because I had this idea of axe throwing, but I was skeptical. Here it is, a family community area of Lakeway, and we're going to reprogram the restaurant to be axe throwing. And you sit and think about that for a second. In a family community, how's this going to be received? Am I going to get roasted on social media? And it turns out it was not only well received, it's celebrated in Lakeway and at Anderson Lane for us taking that risk.
Yeah, it's good. Well, another lesson, always listen to your spouse. Always listen to the wife. That's good.
If you get nothing else from this presentation, do that and honor her or honor him often.
So let's talk about some of the details now that you've made this jump into this space. Can you share us a little bit about what did it cost to install this? What are some of the costs to get up and going and running in this space?
So Bart, I had the pleasure of seeing some of these questions ahead of time, and I was like, this is actually a complicated answer that I'm going to try to summarize pretty quickly, because there's anybody that's thinking about putting in axe throwing is going to go through the same thought process I did. How hard could it be? It's wood. That's the first thing everybody thinks of is like, I could do this. I just go over to Home Depot, go to Lowe's,
build it myself.
Go build it myself. And yes, that even if you are already presented a quote, the first time you see a quote, that will cross your mind. And you are going, just think of it this way, you're going to be paying for that axe throwing many times over because it's lumber and it's going to get axed up, right? No pun intended. It's just going to get chopped up. So we've actually built the axe throwing 3 times, if you can imagine. So one time we did it professionally, and it costs us, I was going to say something like $30,000 to $50,000 to get 4 bays. And we're talking safe, basic, but also certified. But then we saw the success with it, and we're like, what can we do better? And so we worked with our friends at Lasertron, and we added the projector element of it, which does 2 things. It increases the interactivity, but it also prolongs the life of your wood. Because once you start chopping paint up, it disappears. When you chop up wood that's still being projected on, it has maybe another, session in it.
Right.
But there's kind of the price elements of, I can do it myself. You probably could, but just keep in mind, you're going to be building that thing over and over and over again, and your staff is going to become very good at the shop class like we used to have in high school. Then there's let me get somebody that certifies it and makes it professional. And then there's, I think where this is heading is kind of the next level of let's do projected screens so you can put a picture of, use your imagination up there, or hitting different targets or moving the target around. It makes it more fun. And I think that's kind of I would say the most expensive, but also the most fun, adding that interactivity, if that makes sense.
Well, that is some great insight on some varied options from kind of lower cost to high end. Now, I've heard you mention a couple times, and I noticed this is on your website, that you mentioned that you are certified, and you're one of the first or only certified axe throwing locations in your market. What does that mean to be certified?
I would kind of view it in the same way that you do here in bowling. Now, it's not as advanced to where we have the sweet team that pulls up in I don't know what they pull up in, but they have their checklists, and they show us how to certify our lanes USBC, which is important for us to have sanctioned leagues, or even so that we can, anybody that's bowling on our lanes, they have less to complain about. That's what we joke about.
Yeah.
But in axe throwing, it's kind of the same. We have found, though, that that's not so important. I think it's just to make sure that you get it regulation. So what I mean by that is, if you're in an area, and I don't know everybody's markets, but if you're in an area where axe throwing is already a thing, then there could be leagues, and that could be a big thing for you. It's relatively new in our area, so the fact that we got it certified, I think it's just like it's a nice little penciled check mark. More importantly, it keeps us to a standard that this is how it needs to be designed. You can't just build an act on your, hey, I think this is how it needs to be done. There are specifications that are required for I think it's Waddle certification. So anyway, I do say that, but at the same time, I don't want to give the impression that that's actually yielded a lot of revenue. I think it was just making sure we're holding ourselves to a standard that if you threw an axe at my place or Iceberg's place or wherever there's axe throwing, that you're going to have a consistent experience on at least the distance.
Yeah, and I think maybe for Mom that leads to some sense of safety, right? If I hear certified, that I might think that this is a safe environment. I know you have a family visit.
Well, there's my takeaway. You're always the marketer. Let's write that down.
No extra charge for that.
Thank you very much.
So let's talk just a second about, you mentioned about the market and how it's responded. It's been favorable, but tell us a little bit about at your location there. What's been you mentioned a high level of the market reaction, but what's some of the guests when they come in and have that experience? What's that been like for them?
Another challenging answer, because I had my impressions. I kind of use my impressions first, which is kind of slippery slope sometimes because I'm analytical. But I have to imagine a lot of people think like me. Wow, that looks scary. I'll never do that. These are little cartoon bubbles that could pop up, as somebody walking in. I believe that that everybody loves the thrill of it. What makes axe throwing different, I kind of look at what keeps people coming back to High Five to axe throw. It's really not any different than other attractions within the facility. If you can do it at home, or should do it at home in this case. Should not necessarily, unless you live on a ranch, go for it. But you shouldn't really be, and probably won't be, throwing axes at home. So there's a thrill factor of throwing a projectile and having it stick kind of in a, in a violent way, sticking to a piece of wood. Same thing with bowling. There are not many people that have bowling at their home, and I think that's why it's still an attraction that has a life. Do you understand? It's like there's a draw of, wow, let's go do that. That sounds exciting. There's also the thrill of sticking an axe and a sense of accomplishment. And there's some you'll see there, they'll go through 10 frames and not stick anything. They'll want to stay until they stick it. And once they stick it, they're stuck playing it again.
Well, I love what you said about the activity being a thrill of something you can't replicate at home, right? And I think that there's something to that, as when it puts it in that unique bucket like bowling.
That's
that
right.
It's something that you can't replicate that experience. That's fascinating. So without getting too personal, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about what's been the financial impact of this? Has it been a good investment? I mean, obviously putting your second location.
Yes.
If I'm going to do one of those low, medium, or high investments, what's the payoff on that?
It's paid itself several times over. That's the neat thing, is that it's not a high investment. If you kind of think about the game room and you're looking at different, what will be my next attraction and how much space do I need to allocate for this attraction? This is a winner. I mean, this is one where it's a low enough cost, because like I said, even within those 3 tiers, I went all the way at the end, and I think that was helped because my partners, the Littles, they're like, you need to check this out. And so I went up there and saw it, and immediately goosebumps, like, we've got to have this. Yeah. So we went all in, and that's paid for itself already. So there's I would say it's at this moment, as you know, anything can change, but I feel like there's ways to continue to get the investment. For instance, we're investigating. I found out I got this text, and it said, did you make this credit card charge? And I immediately said, that's fraud, because it was a knife store. Well, it turns out that my staff was buying knives to test it out on the axe throwing. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Sorry, guys. You have to order it again. But there's, it's going to keep paying for itself, because we're going to find different ways to do it.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, hey, Scott, before we let you go today, I guess my last question would be anything that you would share with the viewers that you learned that maybe you do different next time, right? You've got a couple of these under your belt now as a successful operator. Any words of wisdom to think through as someone that may be thinking about this? Yeah,
first of all, you're going to hear possibly from a lot of people that this is a easy revenue. It's not. It's tough. But just like everything in life, we have to learn the cycles. We have to learn our market and learn our business, and sticking with it. Understand why you're doing it. Don't lose sight of doing, or lose sight of why do you do what you do. And for us, we want to differentiate. For us is we want to be a super bright spot in the community. So really, it's finding a way to not only fall in love with the community, they're going to fall right back in love with you. How you give, how you're a steward. And really, that's been our mantra, is how we serve. Mm-hmm. Everything about it. So coming into the business, I came in thinking like an engineer. Hey, if I'll build it, they'll come. I know, please don't make fun of me, but that's true. I just thought, they'll just welcome. I'll be Walt Disney. Welcome to my fun land, and I'll shake your hand at the front. And it's not like that. Really, you have to endear yourself to the community. We've come up with something, and I think it was because of Carrie and Brad Little had something that they had at their former company. We call it the High Five Way, and that's really what defines who we are in our service model. And learning how to serve, I think that's the thing that will be the differentiator. And you can't put a price tag on that. That's when it becomes rewarding. The revenue will follow. Yeah. So.
Well, Scott, you've been a great student of our industry and learning so much so quickly. Thank you for coming down and sharing your insight with our viewers today, and wish you just nothing but continued success.
I will, with you guys. It's been fun. Yeah. Sign up for the BPAA.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, hey, gang, as we wrap up another episode of the Bowling University Profit Break, remember that when you're focused on growing people, people will grow your business. We look forward to seeing you next time for another great episode. If you have any questions about today's show or would like additional information, you can reach us anytime at education@bpaa.com. Also, you and your team can watch any of our previous episodes 24/7 by visiting bowlinguniversity.net. The Profit Break is content available when you want it, and we have new episodes premiering every month. Until then, I'm Bart Berger, and remember, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. We'll see you next time.